Hey everyone, it's Jonathan MacDonald here from the Information Lab, coming at you with a very quick and dirty and unscripted bit of server trickery here. So I recently have been playing with the PostgreSQL database component of the Tableau server, which is called the repository. Now, a lot of folks who use Tableau server regularly will know about the repository because within there is a work group database which is often queried to get usage stats. Now, I don't know how many of you know, but there's actually another database in that PostgreSQL instance called Relationship, and this is actually a database that feeds the metadata API and the data catalog feature of Tableau Server. So some of you, depending on whether you paid for the data management add-on product with Tableau, may or may not have access to this external assets tab. If you don't see that in your Tableau Server instance, then you won't have the data management product activated on your server. But if you do, you basically get sort of this cool data catalog functionality. You can switch between looking at all databases and files in use on the site on your server, and all of the tables in use. And in addition to that, you can also get access to a pretty handy notepad, if you like, which lets you write GraphQL queries against the metadata API. So you can write your own type of query to get whatever information you want back about upstream databases or downstream workbooks, or any combination that you like. GraphQL gives you that flexibility. I should say, however, that you don't need to pay for the data management to get access to this metadata API. Anybody can access this page, and anybody can activate the metadata API on their server and start querying this data straight away. However, not all of us want to query an API. It requires that you've got to write some code, or you've got to use some tool that can work with APIs. Wouldn't it be cool if we could just natively surface this data in a Tableau dashboard, which I'm going to show you guys how you can do that today. So here we go. Essentially, we're going to have to get onto the Tableau server machine, run a TSM command that's going to give us the credentials that we're going to use to access this database. So first thing I'm going to do is actually jump into my terminal, and here I've got a Linux instance which I'm SSH'd into, and I've switched to using the sort of the built-in unprivileged Tableau user account that comes with your Tableau server install. Once you're here, you just have to run a TSM command, which is tsm configuration get -k, and now I'm going to try and remember the good old searching in the history has come through for me. So the key that you want to search for is relationship.jdbc.app.password. Okay, so you want to do tsm configuration get -k relationship jdbc app password. And if you let that run, it should retrieve a nice long string, which is the actual password that you need to gain access to this database. Now from here, you can go into web authoring on your Tableau server and connect to this database using localhost as the server name, because by default, this database is not open for remote access, much in the same way that the workgroup database is not open for remote access. So we can do that. We can just go and jump into web authoring, or if you wanted to go one step further, you can provision remote access by editing the Postgres HBA-conf file. And I thought we'll do a little tangent, and I'll go and show you how you can do that as well. So if you want to do that, again, this is all unsupported. You do this at your own risk. Do it on a test environment. Don't do this in prod. But yeah, if you cd through to the default installation directory on Linux is var opt Tableau server. On Windows, it'll be different. You should know, if you're a server admin, you'll know what your default installation directory is set to on your Tableau server, because that's a setting you can't change. But if I go to data, tab svc, config, and then pgsql, and I just tab to autocomplete there, so I'm getting the full version number. In here, we should see there's a file called pg_hba.conf. And if you go in and edit this, scroll right to the bottom, and you can see on this server, under remote connections, so this is the list of connections where remote access is allowed for particular user accounts. You can see we've already enabled access to the workgroup directory, the workgroups database remotely for the read-only user using password-based authentication. So that MD5 at the end of the row, that means that's password-based authentication for the database. So what we can just do is add an additional entry for the relationships database account. Now this is not read-only. The user account is data cat db owner, all one word, and we want to allow access from anywhere. So I'm just going to specify like any old IP address, and we want to use password-based authentication for access. So that's really all it is. I'm going to save and come out of that. Now, I suppose you can go ahead and do a TSM restart for that configuration to be picked up, but we don't want to be waiting 15 minutes for that. So I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit and just reload the Postgres config. And that is a fairly straightforward command. We just have to know how to run it. So we're going to switch directories. This time we're going to go into opt Tableau Server, packages, pgsql. You might get a few options there, but it's pgsql.version number or build number rather, and then /bin. And these are all the binaries for PostgreSQL for that repository component. So in here we should have a command called pgcontrol. And I'm going to rely on my my search. The one thing we do have to specify is the path of the Postgres, of the database directory for the Postgres component. So that is going to be var opt Tableau Server data tab svc pgsql data. And if we hit enter on that, if you've executed the command correctly, you will see that the server has been signaled. And I'm just going to go and validate that. So here is a connection that we had before. I'm going to disconnect and reconnect, and this is from dbeaver on my local machine, and we can see we can get a connection. Okay, so yeah, that is a quick and dirty way of gaining remote access to this relationships database. Okay, so now that we've got access, I'm going to copy that password out, and I'm going to jump into a web authoring window on the same Tableau server. So I'm going to go into create a new workbook. I'm going to use my connectors, Postgres. Because this is the same server, I can just refer it to the local host. The port is the same as the workgroup port, always 8060. The database is called relationship, and the username, as I mentioned before, is datacat db owner, and then you just want to paste in that password that that we retrieved from the settings. Okay, and now we're into this relationships database, and there's all kinds of fun stuff in here. As a simple example, I thought I would just describe very briefly through an example how I think this is set up, but bearing in mind I've only just figured this out in the last few days. I'm still working on it too, but what I hope to do is create one or more curated data sources which I can share with the community, and you can just plug them straight into your Tableau server and start querying all of your server metadata. So let's start with a very simple example. Here I've got a column, a table that describes all of the database columns, or the columns from that are in tables and databases in use on your server. So I'm going to drag that out. These entities are kind of prefixed with the letter V, and then these are sort of the joining tables. So I'm going to start with columns, and then I want to bring in the joining table, which is going to help me connect columns to tables. This is the tables entity. So this one will be E columns, and then we just want to make sure that the join is correctly configured. So in E columns, you've only got 3 fields there, and it's public column, which joins to V column. The next entity we want to bring through is table. And with this, we're going to make sure that we are linking to the public table entity here. Then we want to link table to our database. So again, we need to go back to the tables prefixed with E, and I'm going to bring out E database, and just make sure that that is connecting to the table entity with the right joining key. And then lastly, we want to bring in our database entity. So let's join that. Okay. So now if I just go to sheet 1, let's start with database, and let's start with connection type. Okay, so these are all the connection types that are in use on the server. I'm going to filter down to, let's say, BigQuery, because I only care about the BigQuery connections. And from there, we can go to, within the databases table again, I'm just going to bring up name, and that will give us our database name. And within that, we can have a look in the tables table and bring out a list of tables there. So that's really cool. You can see how we're kind of building out a metadata hierarchy there, if you like, or data catalog hierarchy. And if we wanted to do, keep going further, let's just filter down to the GDELT sample data set. We can then switch to the columns table, and that gives us a list of all our columns. Cool. I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully that's been useful. I'd encourage you all to have a play with this on your dev environments and start building out and sort of hunting through this interesting database and see what we can come out with. As always, give me a shout if you've got any feedback or suggestions, or if you've already had a play with this. I'd love to know what you found so far. That's it for now. See you later.